So I'm Thomas Darton. I was bachelor's and master's student at Bournemouth University. Yeah, so I did my Bachelor of Sciences with honours in psychology for my bachelor's.
Why did you choose your degree?
I initially did psychology as an A-level when I was a bit younger, and I wanted to know a little bit more about the kind of breadth that you learn at an A level, at a level 3 kind of skill set or standard. So I initially went into psychology with the intent to actually focus on criminal psychology or forensic psychology, but I completely deviated from that towards the end. What do I think of my bachelor's now that I finished? That's difficult looking back. So I do remember the first year is like one of the best years of your life. It's just constantly having laughs, eating out, drinking, kind of coming into lectures, not really all with it, but and that's okay. It's kind of expected, and the lectures kind of expect you to be like that. But second year, I remember hitting like a ton of bricks. Second year always hits like a ton of bricks, and then it kind of like declines in fun to life, fun to university.
You have to study a bit more.
That's right, yeah.
So what about your third year?
Yeah, so third year, my third year was COVID year actually. So I did my placement year then, and I did loads of things in my placement actually. I was quite lucky. So I did a psychological learning assistant in a sixth form college school, and I'd kind of basically be a psychology teaching assistant there in my third year. And what else? I moved to India for a little bit, and I worked out there various like psychiatric units, different hospitals, different kind of lectures over there in different universities. And yeah, then towards the end, as COVID kind of like started hitting, I suppose in February 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, it was right at the start. I came out of teaching for my placement, and then moved working into St Anne's Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital around in Dorset. And I started working over there in a treatment unit for a period of time, then moved over to intensive care unit, and actually carried on that into my fourth year, which I suppose is the year of academia that you might want to sort of like want to know about more than my placement year.
I was just going to ask, with your placement year, for students that are a bit confused on how a placement year works, initially the idea of a placement year is you go a year of just working, but you said you've done yours a bit different. So is it possible for every course, or is it just your course specifically where you can do periods of working in different periods, and even have a period where you go abroad and then do? Is that something a lot of students did, or is that unique to you?
It's definitely an option, but it's not an option as advertised. It's something you've got to seek, really. So I was quite fortunate in a sense. So my teaching placement was, relatively pre-arranged. It was quite organized. Then I was quite close to some of my lecturers when I was in my bachelor's, and it kind of came up that the opportunity to go to India and to go and work in a few hospitals and things out there was available, but it's not something they offered through the university. It was a company they were basically advertising or telling me about. So actually my first placement was through the university. My second one was actually through a company called SLV.Global, and I think they've just reopened after COVID now, and it is for anyone from any walk of life that wants to work in a healthcare related field and wants to get some overseas practice. And because that placement was, for an extended period of time, I was able to say, well, look, this is actually kind of a work experience. Can I include these in my placement hours? And they said, yeah. So I went ahead and did that. And then by that point, with my teaching and with the going overseas working in India, I'd accrued all the hours I needed to pass the year. So I essentially stopped my placement year in February, which is only supposed to start in September, but I started it in June, the year before, and essentially started working full time from then, but in a area that's related to my field. So yeah, that's kind of how I wriggled it. It's a bit different. A lot of other people will probably just do one place for 9 months or 12 months or whatever it is, and that's the standard, you know, usually. Alternatively, you can kind of do a bit of what I did, which is, you know, have your placement for, you know, an extended amount of
Your
time.
summer.
Yeah, and spend, say, like a summer doing something abroad, you know, and come back and consider those your hours. Yeah, it's placement years are very liberal. They're very flexible.
And you talked about the agency that you went through to do the placement year abroad. Was it easy going through the process? Although you said it's for anyone and everyone, the actual process, was that easy to do, or was there a bit of barriers to actually, like, you need something or you need to do this, or is it kind of just, we need your information, where you need to go, and then you choose?
There's definitely a strong application process to it, for sure. So is you know, necessary to it's for people that are interested in it and have, you know, either experience in it prior to, or want this to be their first stepping stone into the future experience. So it's, you know, when I first started it, I think it was quite a long application form kind of thing, but worth it. And I think one thing to note is, though, that it's not like it's not a paid opportunity. It's actually an opportunity that you pay to go on. So that is one thing to consider, that if you wanted to do it, this is something you would need to pay to do. So it's not free, but yeah, it's you would look at the program that you would want to do, the amount of time you'd want to go for, and the country that's just right for you, and then yeah, you'd kind of work for it. And I actually ended up working for the company later on as an ambassador to basically sell this to people, I suppose, in universities.
And then in your fourth year, what was that like?
Well, I think it was tough. So that was kind of the whip end of COVID, I suppose. So it's where everything was kind of still online. It was okay. It was a bit challenging because you don't have that face-to-face, you know, contact with your supervisors and things, especially because it's a time of year where you know, your fourth year or other people's third years, your, you know, supervisory
final year.
Yeah, it's your year for your dissertation. It's your year for all your big projects, and it was tough. It was really, really tough. I look back at my masters and think I would absolutely more than happily do another masters as opposed to doing my final year of my bachelor's again. It's tough.
And then after finishing your undergrad, you then went on to do a master's. What was it like in your master's year? Before we get onto your master's, why did you choose to do what masters did you do at university?
So I did my master's in the Foundations of Clinical Psychology at Bournemouth. So I stayed there.
And why did you choose that master's?
It's interesting. So there was a few reasons why. I knew I wanted to go into the world of clinical psychology. I knew it was the kind of area that I would want to know more about, specialize in. It's something that I'd worked in for years and, you know, knew a good amount about, and it's something I wanted to explore a little bit more about in a more in-depth level. Bachelor's degree, you can kind of like touch the surface level of it if you pick it as an option, but to fully specialize in it, masters is what I really wanted to do. So that was the kind of first reason. That was my incentive to actually study it. But in terms of doing it at Bournemouth University, they offered two pretty good incentives for me to stay on. The first one was that as a returning student, I think you get 20% off on your university fees returning as a master's student. And if you get above a 2-1 in your bachelor's degree, then you get an achievement award, I think it is. It's an academic achievement award or scholarship, which is a further £2,000 off of your degree. So yeah, so I essentially saved nearly 4 or 5 grand on my masters. You know, I spent about £4,000 on my masters, as opposed to any other university that I would have gone to, where some clinical psychology masters were looking at 13 grand in London, or, you know, 11 round Bath and things like that. But yeah, Bournemouth was 4, and it's still opened up a world of opportunities for me. I'm still, you know, doing quite well. It's not, yeah.
And now that you've finished and saved all that money, what did you think of your course, your masters?
Yeah, the masters was fantastic. I mean, I couldn't have asked for better supervisors or program leads or anything like that. The lecturers are fantastic, and arguably I think it's because it's so much smaller than, like, in terms of the population of students, so much smaller than a bachelor's degree. For context, I think I had 260 people on my bachelor's in psychology to start with in the first year. And I think towards the end, it probably whittled down to around 180, 190 people. But my master's degree was a group of about 24 of us. So it's a big difference. So you get a lot more contact time. You get a lot more like time for conversations.
One-on-one.
That's right. And even when it's a seminar or a lecture, it still feels like it's a one-on-one, which is fantastic. And the other thing is the opportunities actually that came from that. So not many universities offer you a placement during your master's. So I was actually given the opportunity to do a placement during my master's as well. So that was really good. And during the master's as well, I was also sent out to supervise a group of bachelor students in India. So I was sent out again by the same lecturer that recruited me the first year. So that was quite good. So the opportunities is what drew me back. And looking back, I think it was the best decision to sort of stay local and go with the university I'm familiar with. Like,
so you spoke about how masters is you enjoyed your masters a lot better than your undergrad. If you had to compare the two of how a student can prepare, bridging that gap from an undergrad to a master's, what advice would you give them?
Relax. It's not going to be as bad. That's what I would say. Relax. It's not going to be as bad. There is nothing, I mean, unless you're doing a PhD, there is nothing, in my opinion, worse than your final year of your bachelor's. It makes masters look easy, in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong, master's degrees aren't easy, but in terms of workload, I found it a lot easier. I found there were less assignments. To be fair to the course, they had changed the exam system so that they were an online exam over multiple days, and that's not something I had during my bachelor's. So during my bachelor's, it was you go to a hall, you sit there
in
for
person.
It was like 3 or 4 hours, and it was, you know, a tough memory focused kind of exam. But the exams in the masters was essentially a 3-day assignment, you know, and you have 3 of them to do. So 3 1,000-word assignments with lots of references, blah blah. But yeah, it's essentially an assignment a day. So still tough, still challenging. It's still, you know, draining, but I found it more manageable. I found I had a better quality of life. In terms of my work life, my home life, my uni life, I was able to divide it quite well. And financially, I think I was a bit better off as well, because when you get to masters, you don't want to drink 3 or 4 days a week. You drink 1 day a week, and it takes you 3 to 4 days to recover. Like, it's completely different. So I found, yeah.
Oh, go on. You found.
Yeah, no. So I just found it was like the maturation from your last year of bachelor's to your, you know, to your masters. Significant. I found it easier. I just found it more comfortable, more flexible as well. You don't have to be there every day or something. I think I was on the campus maybe 2 days a week.
So I was going to ask, when doing your masters, do you feel like your undergrad helped, or do you think a student can go right to their masters and still get the experience you experienced?
No, you definitely need to have your bachelor's first, and it depends on your course. So if I was to do I did my bachelor's in psychology and then go and do a master's in marketing.
Marketing.
Say marketing, for example. I mean, they're faintly related, but you'd really struggle, you know, because there's so many, you know, core theories in, say, marketing that you wouldn't know about. There's so many, you know, models and things that you wouldn't know about, but you would know about. Yeah, but you'd know about advertising, say, or you know how to, like, you know about social psychology and stuff, you know. So sure, it's transferable, but if you're going to do a master's, make sure that it's at least 50% related to your bachelor's. So that's my advice there. I don't think you could bypass. I don't think you could bypass bachelor's, go straight to masters, because a master's is specialising in one small specific area usually, and your bachelor's is to give you the foundation so that you understand those specialisms.
Okay, if you're going to go back to when you were in sixth form or college, and you're going to do your bachelor's, what A levels would you have chosen to best prepare you for your bachelor's?
Well, psychology, you know, obviously for me. So I did, you know, I did psychology bachelor's masters, so psychology A level is sensible. I did English subjects when I was back there, but looking back for psychology, your first year of psychology at university is a replication of your A level psychology. The reason is because there will be people coming into your bachelor's degree of psychology in their first year that have never studied psychology before. They wouldn't have had that opportunity, say, in university. So what they basically do in your first year is bring everybody up to speed. So for me and lots of other people that had studied psychology at A level, it was, you know, kind of a walk in the park. It was it was kind of like, oh, we've done all this stuff. This is fantastic. We'll just drink, you know. But for other people that hadn't done, you know, psychology
Study
A level,
hard.
right, exactly. So it depends. I mean, if you were to do, you know, all arts, you know, subjects at A level, let's say you do photography, let's say you do, I don't know, they have these, let's say you do photography, English language, and another subject, business, right? You would have like kind of an intense first year because you need to get up to scratch quick. Whereas everybody that did psychology in their A levels would think it's a walk in the park. So as long as you do psychology as an A level for psychology bachelors, you're fine, in my opinion. But other subjects, it's tough. I think anything that is analytical is my opinion. So a science is helpful, obviously. You know, there's a lot of anatomy in psychology, in neuropsychology specifically, in developmental psychology, when you learn about you know, how babies form. You learn about language in psychology as well. So I would say English language, I would say psychology, and if you wanted to go the extra mile, maybe sociology. Sociology, I think, would have been probably quite a good one as well, or philosophy. Anything that makes you think.
So just to add on to that point, if you did do psychology at A level, it will make your first year more enjoyable because you'll find the content easier. So to best set yourself up, psychology would definitely be the best A level, as you'll find first year a breeze, which means you can have more time to do the things you enjoy and enjoy your first year more.
Absolutely, yeah. Couldn't put it better myself. But with that, you've got to then be thinking about psychology in your GCSEs then. So you've got to be thinking, oh, I find this topic quite interesting in GCSE. You know, even if you haven't done it at GCSE, if you just think psychology seems like a cool topic, you need to pick it for A level. So you need to think about it, you know, kind of before your A levels.
So
you know,
do it right from the start, and you'll
yeah.
be okay. If we go now into the university you're studying at, which was
Bournemouth University.
all the best and worst things about studying at Bournemouth University, starting off with the worst.
The worst things about studying at Bournemouth University.
And this is your undergrad and masters.
My undergrad and masters. I'd say the worst things about, it's tough because I don't think I'd say they were the worst. I'd say the least developed areas of Bournemouth University was at the time the marking feedback. That was quite that was an area that needed development at the time. I think from what I hear now, it seems to have improved because of change of program leadership. And that was bachelor's. I've got to say, I want to specify that was my bachelor's, where feedback for assignments and exams was not as detailed as it was we wanted. Wasn't perhaps as quick as we needed it back, because you know, you'd get an assignment come back and you'd get your marks for it, etc. But you'd have already submitted the next one, you know. So the kind of overlap. You need that
You would have
feedback
got it
before.
wrong again.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You need that feedback before you submit the next one. So there was that. It was the punctuality and the depth of feedback. I think was something that was something that needed definitely development
Improving.
back in bachelor's. Yeah. And I think the other thing was it's difficult because it was such a large cohort, but trying to make sure that everybody was supported. You know, bear in mind there was over 200 people. So retrospectively looking back, that's a large amount of people to try and make sure that everyone is mentally okay, physically okay, and taking into consideration everyone's surrounding or extraneous situations. So that's something that needed more compassion in bachelor's. But comparing it to masters, The feedback was fantastic. It's in depth. You would have a one-to-one about it. It's not normal that you would have a one-to-one meeting with your lecturer about an assignment that you did. That's especially compared to bachelors, where it might be a line with just a question mark on it, and you'd be like, well, that tells me nothing. But masters, you have a full conversation about it. It was punctual. You would get it back. The support was absolutely phenomenal, and I would like to sing her praises, both Shanti Shankar and Emily, my supervisor and the program lead for clinical psychology at Bournemouth, because they are the most supportive people I'd worked with by far. Everything you said was taken into consideration. Everything you needed was acted on to their best degree, and the opportunities they offer is just fantastic. As long as you are interested, they're interested. It's all reciprocated. What you give is what you get. Yeah.
So you started talking about the good things, like you said in your masters. What were the best things about studying at Bournemouth University, undergrad and masters?
Yeah, so the things about the bachelor's is this freshness of and I say freshness with kind of irony, because you're a fresh when you first start, but I mean it's this freshness of like all new people around you and all new friends, and meeting people from so many different areas and different like walks of life and places in the UK you've never even heard of. You think that's a place? Wow, okay. And it's also kind of like mingling with people that are older or younger than you. So if you go in as like a mature student, or you meet a mature student, or people that have done their gap years and things, and it's learning so much more about other people. It's that I think is really lovely. That's what really shapes people in Bournemouth, in university in general. So that's definitely one of the most positives. That's one of the positives. I think the other thing is the opportunities you can get at Bournemouth University. If you look for it, you will find it. There is absolutely everything you want at your fingertips. If you want a specific society, you can just join it, and if it doesn't exist, you can make it. And if you want to do a specific sport, you'll find it. There's a skydiving club, for God's sakes. I mean, there's everything you want. So in terms of opportunities, I mean, abroad, you could do semesters abroad. I remember my cohort was offered a semester in Canada. The opportunities at Bournemouth are fantastic, and the society is just brilliant. And masters as well.
Masters?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, masters. I mean, I can't really give any areas where it would need development, because the clinical psychology masters was fantastic. Perhaps the statistics area. I mean, the statistics in masters, assumed that you had a lot of statistical knowledge anyway, and that's probably something that needed development. I think that's something we fed back on to kind of dumb it down a little bit for us, because it's tough. But the better things about that course, again, are the opportunities, meeting people from all different areas, and the work opportunities you get as well, because obviously you're now a graduate. You get better work opportunities. You're getting pushed, supportively pushed into the right areas for applying for doctorates, for applying for good jobs. You're getting contacts and links. So yeah, that's what I would say is the best things.
And you talked about societies. Did you join any societies while at university?
Yeah, I was in the swim team in my bachelor's for a year and a bit, I think. Yeah.
And what was that like? What did you? Although obviously you swam, but was it more than just swimming? Was it like a social club? Was it Olympic training? Was it competition? Can you tell us about what it was like to be part of the swimming society?
It's a mixture of all of it. So the training is intense, obviously, and it pushes you, and you have to be fit, and you have to be, but it's for all abilities as well. You'll get to a point where you'll be better, but I mean, obviously, if you're going to swim for university, you've got to be pretty good in the first instance. The socials for the swim team were fantastic. They have a saying, if I think I remember it from 5 years ago: swim fast, drink faster, was the kind of thing. So the societies were fantastic. They were themed. You'd go out on a Wednesday, and you'd have a varsity night. So the universities around Bournemouth, you have a specific nightclub called Cameo, and everybody that's in a society or varsity would go there. So the nightlife was fantastic. The social life was brilliant. The friends you make from all different year brackets as well is something you wouldn't get in your course normally because you'll all be relatively the same age, same year. So yeah, that's brilliant as well.
And while you were at university, you had to find somewhere to live. Where were you living in your first year?
Well, through both my degrees for all 5 years, I was actually living at home because I live in Bournemouth anyway. So I didn't actually move out anywhere. I can just stayed here.
And what was life like living at home compared to your usual student who would live in a student accommodation and or house while at university? Do you feel like there were things you missed, or there were things you benefits such as saving money? Or tell us what it was like for those students who may want to stay at home and commute to university.
Yeah, so pros, you save a lot of money. You're not spending all that money on. I mean, you're not spending all that money on extensive rent. You're not having to live on scraps of food because you couldn't get to the shops, or because you needing to hold down like another job or whatever to just survive. It's you've got the comfort of your own space, your own an environment that's familiar to you. You're not going to be walking around with the kind of sticky hall floors and like pots and pans that your friends still haven't washed up and it's been nearly a week. So you get a level of comfort, financial and personal comfort. And in terms of the financial part of it, it's great because you still get your maintenance loan, but you don't need to worry about your accommodation or where you're going to stay or where you're going to be living again next year and the year after that. You just know it's going to be a constant. So I kind of took the opportunity to travel actually with the money that I saved from not living in halls and living in student houses. Cons, however, is you kind of do feel like alienated, a little bit. So there'll be kind of like flat rules, flat parties, or flat jokes and things, and you kind of with it, but you're not in it, if that makes sense.
Where they're talking about that accommodation, but you can't understand it because you've not lived in the accommodation to know exactly what they're talking about.
That's right. Yeah, it's just like that, and it's also the kind of like the experience of just living with your friends. That's something that I really want to experience, and I usually people by my age, have had that and now want to live by themselves. But I'm kind of the other way around. I want to live with my friends now. I haven't experienced that before. So yeah, that is the con. And there's the commuting as well. You can't, people that live in Bournemouth, usually your accommodation is in Bournemouth or Winton. And so what happens is you'll go out and you'll come back, after a night out, and you can just walk. But for me, I live 10 miles away from the university. So actually going out and coming back was like nearly an £80 taxi there and back for me. So
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you talked about you actually living in Bournemouth. That means you are very knowledgeable about the Bournemouth area, where things are to get your everyday things. Was there a difference in living in Bournemouth and being a student in Bournemouth when it came to the area?
Yes. So I would say being a student of Bournemouth, you are going to probably be living in either Lansdowne as a first year, and your local shops are going to be like the Asda and things like that. And that's, it's nice, that's fine. But when it comes to your second years and onwards, when you're living in Winton, you'll have then like the Lidls and you'll kind of have that environment there. For me, because I was living at home, I had like different kind of like luxuries. So I could go into my local village and I could just walk in there and go to my shops there. I'd go to my local little market. So the environment is completely different. Though, the students that were living in halls and in houses would have had walking distance to lots of different things that I didn't have. I would have had to have driven quite far for those kind of things, like gyms, like pubs and bars. They're things that I would have to commute for, but for them it's on their doorstep.
And what was the Bournemouth nightlife like?
Yeah, so it's got everything for every age. So when you're in your bachelors and you're kind of like you're fresher and you're young and can drink as much as you want, or think you can drink as much as you want, you go to, I would say there was, when I was there, 3 main clubs, and it was Cameo, there was
Halo?
Walkabout and Halo. Yeah, they were the 3. And then around that time as well, while it was still a thing, was Lost Paradise as well, was a nightclub. But that's changed now. That's how
Yeah.
you go as well. So yeah, those are the three main ones, and they're the kind of ones where you go where if you're chatting to somebody, you're going to get asked either what year are you in, what do you study, and it's kind of like assumed that everybody there is a student. So it's nice and it's communal, and everybody's kind of there just for fun and for their own, everyone's there for the same things. Masters, as you're kind of getting older, you just you want to actually have a conversation with your friends instead of just like bopping about and drinking as much as you can. So like bars are a lot more exciting places, and it's kind of where you spread out from them. So going into the Bournemouth Triangle is actually a really exciting place because you've got so many quaint little bars there. So you kind of deviate a little bit maybe from the big capacity wait outside for 45 minutes to get entry kind of nightclubs into the kind of quaint kind of place, if you go kind of thing.
Okay. And what general advice would you give students about to study at university?
About any university, any topic?
Any university, any topic. So these would be students who are in sixth form college going into their first year studying any subject or uni.
I would say have a 50-50 head on you. Enjoy it, because there is not going to be an opportunity in your life again, realistically, when you can just have as much fun as you can when you're in your bachelor's, or at least your first year anyway. There's not many opportunities where you can just kind of live relatively carefree. So enjoy it, but make sure that you work hard enough so that you don't screw yourself over for your future. A lot of people will want to do masters, a lot of people want to do doctorates, they want to have a good job. It's competitive, very competitive. And yeah, grades and things do really matter. So enjoy your life, have fun, but don't forget that you're there for a purpose. You're there for a reason too. That's what I would say.
What advice would you give to students about to study at Bournemouth University?
Ooh, look at accommodation early. That's what I would say. I mean, like I said, I never really had to, but I mean, obviously my social circles for the last 5 years had to do that. Look for accommodation early. Try and find a nice place. That's what I would say. So much stress of my friends came from, misunderstanding landlords, or, not great living conditions, and a lot of problems with getting money back and things. So do your research, look at forums. Try and find a nice place to live. And a lot of people use Student Pad to like find a place in Bournemouth, or Facebook as well. But there are other websites as well. I think there's one called there's one called Room to Let or something like that, or spareroom.com, I think it's called. I advise using that. You might not be living with a lot of students or something like that, or they might be like mature students, but you're guaranteed to be living in actually like a nice home. And I say home, we're not a house there in that kind of situation. And I think another bit of advice I'd give to somebody moving to Bournemouth: make use of the sea. I mean, a lot of people are moving down from so many places that are just landlocked. So enjoy the sea, enjoy where you are, and don't be afraid to try new things and go to new weird little places. Get everything you can out of Bournemouth while you're in Bournemouth.
What advice would you give students about to study your course at university?
The bachelor's or masters or both?
Both. We'll start with the bachelor's and then the master's. So this is advice for the bachelor's degree.
Okay. Advice for somebody starting the bachelor's, I'd say do psychology as an A-level first. And look at the syllabus, look at what you're going to be learning. What are you going to find really interesting? What do you think you're going to struggle with? What do you find least interesting? And the things you find least interesting, start reading on them first in your spare time. Just find things that you are interested in about that area so that you can at least relate to it. That's what I would say, because you will inevitably come across something in psychology that you just find dull, and that's okay. The thing I just couldn't really enjoy was language and cognition and language in my bachelor's. I just couldn't enjoy it. So I tried to read fun facts about cognition and language, just so I would try to ignite some interest. And that kind of got me through. So yeah, try and find interest in things you don't find as interesting. And I think I would say constantly look around for opportunities, utilize the university website, talk to lecturers and ask what kind of research assistant opportunities they've got going, because that is such a good way to get ahead of the game and as an assistant psychologist and doctorates in jobs. So keep asking around, keep looking for things, be inquisitive. That's it.
What advice would you give for the masters?
I think I'd give the same, to be honest. By maybe the end of your bachelor's, you'd have probably learned about yourself, how you structure assignments and exams, how you manage your time, how you structure things. So you'd have learned yourself. I think the whole point of the bachelor's is to learn what academia is. Your masters should be like utilizing that and refining it. So don't be scared to kind of, branch out a little bit with what kind of techniques work well for you in terms of studying, revising, doing assignments and things. Don't be afraid to kind of branch out and look at different weird and wacky ways of doing it, because you never know if it'll work for you.
Okay. So you chose going to university over an apprenticeship / going right into work. What path do you to make this choice?
Well, there's some jobs that if you want to work in, you need to have a degree for. So my initial incentive was that I wanted to go and study my doctorate of clinical psychology. So I want to be a clinical psychologist. And you can't do an apprenticeship to be a doctor, unfortunately. So it was a case of the long process: bachelor's, master's, doctorate. So it was kind of the only thing for me that I could have done, that because there's only so far you can get without university education in psychology, and realistically it's probably band 3, maybe band 4 in the NHS as support working, mental health support working. You can't get much further without some kind of university course, though you can do there are courses that are like CBT courses or IAPS courses and things like this that are actually apprenticeships and are degree level, but again, you're kind of confined to where you can go beyond that. So for me, the incentive was I've got to get this degree because I need to get to this job.
Okay. What was life like at SLV.Global?
Very good, very fun, and very long. The days were long, so each day was about 16 hours, and your job out there was your whole rationale was to promote positive mental health. That's what we kind of was aiming to do. So we would be going to 2 different locations each day, and you'd spend something like 4 hours at each per day. There would be commute time in between that, getting to the place, getting to the next place, getting back, and then you'd have session planning in the evenings. So, I might go to, say, a special needs school in the morning, and then go to a all-female geriatric unit in a hospital in the afternoon. So you are experiencing every part of of mental health, because that's what I wanted to do in the placement. You're exploring every kind of area of mental health, plus trip days as well. So I'd go to they took us to the Bangalore Research Institute of Neurobiology, I think it's called, and then there was a lovely place called the Art of Living, I think it was, and where you learn more about meditation and yoga and mindfulness based psychology. So the life with SLV was absolutely fantastic, and I wish that I spent longer there doing it longer.
And what was life like as a research assistant for Bournemouth University?
Really interesting again. So you find so many weird and wonderful studies that you can kind of hop onto, at Bournemouth, or in universities in general, to be honest. So the one I was a research assistant for was to identify identify sexuality through EEG brain scans, basically. So you could put a hat on somebody, do a brain scan, and they'd have to look at nude images of males and females, clothed images of nude of males and females, and you'd essentially look for differences in their brainwaves.
Differences.
Yeah, you just want to see like differences in their kind of brainwaves. So I specifically was responsible for recruiting homosexual males. So the idea was you could see the difference between distraction and attraction. But to summarize it, the skills that I learned, I mean, from doing that is fantastic, and it's a good talking point too. You know, I was 20 years old, and I was trained to do a type of brain scan. There's not many people can say that. So again, the opportunities to be fantastic in terms of that, and being a research assistant means that you get your name like as an associate, or like associated as a publication. So that was quite cool as well.
Okay, so your name will officially be on that research when it's published.
Yeah, technically. So that one was a pilot study. So it's essentially you do the same study on a really small group of people. Prove there's like an effect to say, look, if you give us loads of money or like more money, we can do this on a bigger scale, and it would have more research weight. So a pilot study is basically saying, this is kind of what we're getting at the moment, give us a bit more money, and actually we can make it bigger. So I don't think my name's on that. I don't think you get your name on a publication as a pilot study, but if they were to go back and get the grant or get the funding, then I imagine I might, or probably return and go back and do it again, because I quite enjoyed it.
And what was like life at the Sexual Trauma and Recovery Services?
Yeah, STARS. So that was my master's placement. So when I was at STARS, my responsibility was to do an internal audit on about 1,800 service users. So that's about 1,800 people that are coming to use the sexual trauma services in Dorset over a span of, I think, about 2 or 3 years or something. And the responsibility was essentially to identify gaps in assessments that had been missed, assessments that were missing, and to identify whether or not people were making progress over an 8-week period. I think it was an 8-week period, yeah. Well, there's 2 different types, but yeah, 8-week to 20 period, I think it was. And yeah, so that was really interesting. That was like my first experience working clerically, in an administrative kind of research position. Previously I'd done, research work as, frontline, brain scanning, or working in intensive care units, working out in India doing things. But this is my first kind of experience working behind the scenes, doing things with like folders, doing clerical stuff. So it was admin stuff too. Yeah. So it was actually a good experience in a sense, because it taught me that I didn't have to be full on all the time. I could like take a step back and make equally as much impact, but by being less busy.
And finally, what is life like at the NHS?
Yeah, well, at the moment we've got, it's a kind of a sensitive time at the moment, obviously.
With all the strikes going on.
That's right, yeah. So I think I can split it into two areas really, because I've worked the 2 NHS trusts in Dorset, so I think that's 3 technically. So I did Dorset Healthcare NHS, and that was all the psychiatric hospitals that I was working in. That's stressful, it's good fun. You meet some really, really amazing people, staff and patients, and you make some weird and wonderful memories. And it's a bond you share with people that you can't replicate, because you go through so much together. So life in the NHS is, in my opinion, all about the people you are with. Nobody goes into the NHS to make money. It's just not going to happen. You go into it because you care about it and you want to do it. So yeah, DHC, Dorset Healthcare, was fantastic for its psychiatrics. In my period, it is fantastic for its psychiatrics. University Hospitals Dorset, which is where I'm at now, is the other side. So that's Poole Hospital, Bournemouth Hospital, and Christchurch Hospital. And where I was so intensive care and so treatment units and acute admissions and all that stuff for years, it was kind of nice to take a back step. Yeah, a back step, but also like a pay increase to helps, to a more administrative position. And since I'd done a relatively good amount of research previously, it was an area that I really found interesting. So that's where I'm at now. I work I approve all changes to research in Dorset now, which is really nice. It's a really nice position to be in.
So you started at university, obviously, in a certain way, with certain mindsets, with certain attitudes. You've now gotten to where you are now, where you've done a graduate, you've done a bachelor's and then a master's. Do you feel like in that time you've either changed, grown, or just experienced something that's made your psyche different as you went through university? So my question is, just to have a bit of context there, do you feel like you've grown while you've had growth personally while at university?
Massively. I think it is such a maturing point. And I like the way that you use psyche there as well, because psyche is basically wisdom, so I absolutely, you grow so much between 18 to 21. It is unrecognizable. Just today, literally today, my sister sent me a picture of what I looked like 5 years ago when I first started my degree. And I mean, admittedly, I'm 3 stone lighter and I've got no facial hair. I don't look like I've been dragged through a bush, but I look so fresh and daisy, but also naive. There's so much about life you don't really know yet at that point, and so many struggles that you don't anticipate on not only experiencing but overcoming too. That's the really important part. So yeah, the mental and emotional growth from 18 to 21 is significant. You will lose friends, gain friends, lose interest, gain interests. You just change. It's like your body is one massive taste bud, and it just completely reforms. 21 to 23, again, it's kind of similar. I think, in my opinion, life really starts at 21. 18, anything before 21 is kind of the DOS about years, in my opinion. Work hard, get what you need, get to a point where you can enjoy your 20s. Like I did. I worked hard during my teens and things, and I can kind of reap that now back in my 20s. So yeah, but before 21, everything is kind of a fun days. But 21 onwards, I think life kind of like hits you a little bit more seriously, because you start getting those Facebook posts about people having babies and buying houses and kind of getting like a new car, and you're like, okay, I should probably why isn't my life a bit like this? So I think the overarching thing I would kind of say across that 5-year span, 18 to where I am now, coming up 24, so nearly 6 years, is even though other people are doing better than you, worse than you, or however you perceive it to be, it's just a completely different path, and you are maturing every day. It doesn't matter, it's a very small amount every day, but every day you are maturing that little bit more. So I completely think that you grow. I think you become a bit slower as well, in the sense that you don't have to be so energetic and kind of like spiky all the time. I think you can just take that time to just relax a little bit and say no, to things, and your FOMO, your fear of missing out, is kind of reduced as well, which is really peaceful, actually.
Question for you: when going to India, what were the biggest differences in lifestyle, culture, just being a UK British student in India?
Wow. I was fortunate. I did it twice. So I did it in my bachelor's and in my master's. So my bachelor's, when I went over there, it was very much a group kind of like organized event. Your accommodation was kind of like booked for you. It was all kind of done. All your food was going to be in the same place. You knew kind of where you were going to be working the next day and things. So scheduling wise, that was with SLV.Global. Fantastic. It is such an incredible experience to wake up to the sound of like tuk-tuks every day. It's beautiful. The second time I went was a bit different. So I was supervising bachelor students out there for a period of time, and kind of like running lectures as well, which was quite interesting, especially with the difference in what you need to be qualified out there as well is different. So I'd had my master's, so I was out in India a clinical psychologist, but in England I wasn't, not for another like 5 years. So it was a very strange feeling for somebody to call me a clinical psychologist when, you know, in England I'm not. It's like it's a protected title, like, you know, you say that and you can be in real trouble. So that took a lot of getting used to. But in terms of culture, I remember one of our first classes that we kind of had out in India, and God, I wish I could remember the place that I was living at the time. Oh well, I think it was called the ODP, the Organisation for the Development of People, which is where I was kind of staying for a period of time, and they essentially gave you classes on Indian culture so that you can fit in, so that you can you know, engage better with the service users while you're out there. This is the first time I went, and you know, the kind of things that you would never have thought about otherwise. You know, women smoking cigarettes on the street, you know, on the pavement in England. That's just somebody having a cigarette. But over there, it's a sign of sex work, you know, for women to do that.
Oh.
Yeah. For example, when we're in England and you might like cross your legs, you know, and have your leg over like this. If your bottom of your foot is facing somebody in India, it's actually a sign of disrespect. But in England, you're just putting your leg on
your cross.
Yeah. You know, there's so many. I mean, engagement rings, for example. I mean, so when you're married, you'd have like a ring on your finger. In England, but in India, the woman would have a ring on her toe, a toe ring, to say that she was married. So there's so many amazing little quirks and differences about it, but it's the society that I think really kind of make it, because you see such differences. You can go through a wealthy touristy area where everyone's kind of doing relatively well by Indian standards, Indian societal standards. But then there are the, you know, communities that we would visit as part of work that would be, you know, really underfunded. You know? Yeah, really pervert. Yeah, really in deep poverty and things. And you know, I think that was definitely a point of maturation for me, was that that first person understanding of the third world, I think, is the
So in that concept of, that was very eye-opening of how good it is. Like, we have problems in the UK, but we have, as you say, first world problems. Where in India, they have problems that are not first world, not second world, third world, serious life problems that could be the difference between life and death.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you just look at the COVID pandemic over in India, it was rife because they just didn't have. I mean, admittedly, England didn't have the best kind of like PPE, you know, supply in the world. But I mean, you compare that to the Indian standards, I'm sure as a percentage of people that were covered in the UK with PPE, it's probably significantly larger than India. But that's not a statistic I know. That's just an assumption based on what I was kind of like seeing. I was there before and after. So it's very. Yeah, the healthcare I remember over there in India as well is really challenging as well. You know, I was, like I said, working in a few hospitals kind of out there, and you go into, say, a waiting room in England. Yeah, so sure, you'll be around quite a lot of people. You'll be keeping to yourselves, and then you get called into the various doctors that are around the corridors, you know, in their own little rooms. Open the door, Thomas Darton, yeah, okay, and then you walk in. Well, and then you come through to their little office. India's completely different, especially this one hospital I was kind of like working in. Is everybody is sat like chairs next to each other in rows, in what is a waiting room. But then there's a table at the front where the doctor is sat as well, so everybody would essentially hear each other's problems, and it sort of rotates like that. So privacy, you know, in a sense, is. But those are people that are actually really privileged to go and see a doctor. There's a lot of people that you know don't do that don't have the opportunity to. But also, some people wouldn't seek it out either. Wouldn't have medical help sought after. You know, still in India, there's still parts where you know, say psychosis, for example, is a result of black magic. You know, for example. So even then, even the people that have access to it might not use it because of culture differences.
And would you say for you that was a part of the growth sector, as in for students who really want experience and have a different level of maturity and realism, a placement abroad will really open their eyes?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I recommend doing it outside of Europe, in my opinion. The reason I think I say that is because Europe isn't. I mean, as a blanket, there are European standards, and they, very heavily merge with, the now UK, UK standard.
Now separate.
Now that we're separate, they are very much the same in terms of healthcare. In the kind of more developed European countries. Admittedly, if you were to do something in Greece, say, or I don't know, Serbia, for example, these are kind of like more, underfunded, or from my understanding, the healthcare might be a little bit behind. But again, that's an assumption. That's not something I've got statistics to back. But it's not exactly going to be as well developed as, say, the Germanic, Germany, or France.
Russia.
Yeah, yeah. So it's different. But you're not going to get the significant difference that you need to understand more about global mental health as you would if you did one in, say, Asia or Africa. I recommend one of those two.
Question: is university worth it?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Wow. I think to answer that, you've kind of got to ask another question in return, which is, why isn't it worth it? Because I think you could probably think of maybe about a solid 2 reasons maybe why university isn't worth it.
Debt would be one argument.
Yeah.
And academic working. So not everybody can do the studying.
Yeah.
That's 2 arguments I think are the only arguments that I can personally think against university, and that I constantly hear against universities.
Yeah.
So how would you, as a student, counter those, or be a pro-university if you think university is worth it?
It's quite easy. You just got to think of at least 3 reasons why it's better than that. I mean, if you were to, if debt and if debt and stress are the 2 main problems, there's always going to be debt. That's a fact. As somebody in my 20s and in debt, but also went to university, it happens. Whether you get a mortgage, it's still considered a debt. If you get a car on finance, that's considered debt. Sure, it's not going to be as big as a university loan, but at current, I'm band 5 at the moment, and I pay, I think it's like £30 or £40 a month for my degree. I'm never going to pay it back, and that's fine, But as long as it's something along those lines, it's not too bad. It's not like I'm paying out thousands. It doesn't even come out of your account. It's not like a standing order or anything. It comes out of your salary straight away. So you wouldn't have even. It's not like you're spending the money. It's money you never would have even had in the first place. So I mean, the great thing is, so there's a big difference actually between bachelor's repayment and master's repayment. I'm sure this is something you probably have covered, but bachelor's repayments, I'm not going to be paying that back until I earn over 27 grand, I think it is, or something like that.
Around that number.
Yeah, and my master's I pay back after 21,000. So over £21,000, then I start paying back my master's. So I'm not even paying back my bachelor's at the moment. I'm just chipping away at my master's, and even that I got loads of money off anyway. So it's really, a lot of people say, I don't want to go to university because of the debt, but actually you don't. It's not debt. It's just a monthly installment that you pay, which is quite minimal based on how much you earn and what year you go to uni.
So do you think that investment you made into your master's and bachelor's, you've received back in experience and or opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the opportunities and experience I've gained so far, it's the stuff that I'll kind of get in the future too. So if I was to kind of say to somebody, would you pay £20 a month to be comfortable and to be, doing something you genuinely enjoy for the rest of your life? I guarantee that they would say yes. I don't think about it as a debt or a loan. I think of it as a happiness tax. because I am paying money per month to be in a position where I am happy. I am excited to go to work. It's something I've always wanted to do. And if you don't need to go to university to do it, great, good on you. So you don't need to. But people that do, which is, at least 50% of people, is, you kind of need to go to uni and get a degree to, do what you want to do. So don't think of it as a debt. Think of it as happy tax. The best way I can put it.
So at this point, I let students have what I like to call a free-for-all. You can say what you like about what you want. You can say something smart. You can say something dumb. Literally, the floor is yours.
Oof, God, that put me on the spot. I think the best thing I can do is actually give advice. And I think, oh, God, Christ, I think I'd split it. Look after your mental health and your physical health. And don't forget that the two are split, but the two are connected. I would say make sure your health is something that's going to be with you all your life, whether it's, a job is going to come and go, money's going to come and go, partners, family, everything comes and goes. But your health doesn't. So look after it, because it's important to look after. God, what else? I would say don't worry. Just there's no point worrying. Everything is so stressful when you're in that situation, when you're there and when it's happening to you, when you're overwhelmed. It sucks. And you're stressed, but there's a difference between being stressed and worrying, So to be stressed is like a response in the immediate situation, of whatever's like quite demanding. But worrying is to ruminate on it, I think, in my opinion, So don't ruminate on your stress, because that's just worry. Stress in the time that you're given, because you can be optimal, you can be fantastic in that stressful period. But don't ruminate on it. I think that's what I would do. And I think if I could give one piece of advice outside of all of that, is to travel. Because at any point in your life, you will be in a rented house, you'll be with a mortgage, you'll have a partner, you'll have kids, you'll have payments, you'll have whatever. And so many people are eager to just start that life from so young. But what they don't realize is that they've amputated such a large part of their previous life, So I would say travel as much as you can while you're young, and do it on a budget so that you can enjoy all the cruises and all the 5-star inclusive stuff later on. But sleep in a tent, sleep on a floor, find a friend and crash it there, sleep on a sofa, do weird things while you can, while you're young. That's what I would say. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'm plugged in.